Call this meeting to order. Everybody will rise.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this beautiful spring, time for hope and renewal. We thank you so much for the blessing of living in Sky Valley. We thank you for the privilege of living in America where we can come together and meet and discuss our future. We thank you for these volunteers and for the staff that cover these meetings. Please watch over their hearts and minds and guide them. And dear Lord, please continue to watch over our servicemen. In the name of Jesus Christ, in the name of one great God, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to have approval of the minutes for February 12th work session and February 19th regular council meeting.
I move to approve the meeting minutes.
Second that.
The moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
On the adoption of the agenda, I'd like to have a motion to adopt this agenda.
I've got a motion to amend the agenda to add an executive session to discuss pending litigation.
Been moved,
I'll second that.
moved and second, we amend the agenda for executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Now, then have an adoption of the approved agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We moved and second, all in favor of the agenda?
Aye.
Under mayor's remarks, first I'd like to have Helen, please.
Good morning, everybody. I'm here on behalf of the 200th birthday of Raven County. You've seen signs around and different types of information. This year celebrates Raven County's 200th birthday. Each city has been asked to have an activity to promote visitors to come to Raven County and also to encourage current residents of Raven County to revisit some of the areas that we're also familiar with. For example, Tiger is having several movies at the Tiger Drive-In during the spring and summer months, movies that were filmed in Raven County, so be on the lookout for that schedule. Mountain City is going to reinvent the buck dancing that they used to have every weekend, and that will bring back a lot of people that used to go to camps in this area. And so different cities are doing different things to encourage people to come back or come to Raven County. We can't have a skiing event, so I was asked to come up with an event for Sky Valley, and this is what we've come up with. For Mother's Day weekend, on May the 11th actually, the Saturday of Mother's Day weekend, we are having a wildflower and early birders walk. Patty Calderon helped design this poster. A lot of people have been at work already getting prepared for this event. I want to thank the city for the support that the city is giving, and that we will have a big cleanup day between now and May the 11th to clean up the pathway down by the waterfall. Our participation will be visitors are invited to come and park at the Community Bible Church, the Old Lodge parking lot. We are borrowing shuttles from Duval Ford. I've already got 2 drivers that will drive people from the parking lot down to the waterfall, because as you know, I think all of you have been there, it's difficult to make that turn, and so we're not going to have cars driving down there. We're going to have shuttles to carry people there. Once there, at 7 o'clock, Emily Jo Williams, who is a bird expert and a resident of Sky Valley, will be there to do an early birders walk. So if you come, please bring your binoculars. and that will be at 7. And then beginning at 8 o'clock, we will focus on the Wildflower Trail. The Garden Club members, some of them have been very supportive in painting wildflowers that we have at this time of the year. They will be standing, holding pictures of wildflowers beside the actual wildflower to give information about the flowers that bloom in May. The lodge, the Community Bible Church actually will be open that day because there are a lot of people that used to come up and ski and haven't been in that lodge for years. I talked to someone just the other day that said they sure would like to see the inside of the lodge again. I said, well, it's going to be open that day. Volunteers from the Community Bible Church will be hosting visitors to come through the old lodge. So there will be a lot going on. The golf course is going to give 10% discount on golf Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Turn Cafe will offer 10% off of lunch on that Saturday. And I'm working with Elizabeth to name some of the items on the menu to deal with wildflowers, like a wildflower wrap and an early bird's biscuit and things like that. So it will be a busy day. We'll be having visitors here. I'm hoping that all of the city councilors will be able to be here. This could possibly, I've talked with Ella at length about this could possibly be an annual event, because this time of the year, we need things to draw people to Sky Valley, and this second week in May is a great time to do that. So I could use your help if any of you are interested to be volunteers that day, particularly Saturday morning. There are a few things that I've got that I would love for you to help do. And other than that, if you have any questions, please see me after the meeting. Thank you, Bob, very much. I tried to take 3 minutes without.
We have 2 new patrolmen. I'll have the chief, if he would bring them down front and introduce them to the. Maybe take a picture of them.
All right, please disregard the mixed match uniforms, but this is our progression, so to speak. We do have current, one of the things that I encountered when I came here was this. Everybody was wearing different stuff, so we're trying to become uniform, the word uniform. So their uniforms are on order, they're on back order. This time of the year it's hard to get them. But this is Roderick Spence. He comes to us from Moultrie, Georgia. He's got a few years of experience already. This is Dakota Dills. He comes from Raven County Sheriff's Department. His father was former Chief Scott Dills here, so a lot of you may remember him when he was a lot smaller. But they're both already certified officers. They both already have road experience. They both already know what they're doing. They're just going through an orientation because, it's kind of hard to figure out your way around in Sky Valley. Everybody gets lost. That's what we're going through right now, but other than that, we're excited to have them, and we were really blessed to get them, and I just hope we can keep them a long time.
Thank you. We have a change in the order of the agenda for today. We're going to jump basically right down to number 9. And that we're going to consider the bear ordinance, since it's going to be quite lengthy. And what we're going down to is the item number 9 first. And we're going to have Ella on.
Yes, sir. Each year we do the Great American Cleanup. Actually, it occurred this past weekend. And we do the proclamation to recognize this, and this is just a normal bookkeeping thing that we do to keep it on record that we have participated in this. So I'm requesting that council approve this proclamation.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second for the proclamation for cleanup. All in favor? Aye. And Ella again on the municipal.
Yes, sir. Municipal Clerks Week is May 5th through the 11th. As a former city clerk, I realize how hard the job is at times. So I'd like to take this time to recognize my two clerks here. I have Karen is our city clerk and Lisa is our deputy clerk. They put a lot of work into these meetings. It's not just throwing something together. It takes a while to get all this together. And they are great help and support in the office, and I just want to take this time to thank them for their hard work, and also ask that council consider approving this proclamation as well for Municipal Clerks Week.
So moved.
Did you want to read that?
Okay.
I'll second it.
Moved and second. Have a vote on the proclamation for clerk.
Yes.
Mayor's Arbor Day. This is to plant a tree. Last year we didn't plant one, we figured we had enough trees. Most of the time they always want to chop them all down, so we celebrate the Arbor Day in other communities, and if they need help in planting trees, we can go help them. I don't think that we need to plant any more trees right now. In fact, we don't even know where we could plant it, since we don't own any land to plant them on. So we're going to more or less bypass Arbor Day for Sky Valley. Sure.
We still need to have the proclamation.
Okay. We do have to vote on it. Our Arbor Day for April 26, 2019. And we have a motion to accept Arbor Day for Sky Valley.
So moved. Second.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
And we just want ratification for the bid for our fence down on the overlook. The bid of $12,306.
So moved.
The move, second?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion on it?
Starting today.
Yes, sir.
Started
They are
today.
starting today.
So, all in favor of the quote for
Aye.
motion? Carried.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? I was just curious, was there some insurance money from the vehicle that went over through the
Yes.
fence that
Yes.
helps defray that cost?
Yes, ma'am.
There was. Police Department. We want the approval of the bid for a police department from Duval Ford for $38,064.72.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept the bid from Duval Ford as presented.
I second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion on it?
Just that the 38,000 includes the vehicle being properly outfitted with all the additional equipment that doesn't come on the original model.
As you turn your page, you can, that was on that list. All in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion? Not? Have, consider that bid for Duval Ford. And then ratification resolution for the adoption of the 2018 budget amendment. Ella?
Yes, sir. What this is, we have to do a true up at the end of the year. Our original budget, was $1,176,500 in our general fund. Excuse me, that's not correct. Let me get the totals. It was, $1,196,000. We ended up, that's revenues again. Let me get to the right thing. I'll get it right in a minute. Originally, it was $1,196,000 in expenditures. We actually came in a little less. There are a few things that went a little over on some divisions, but overall, we ended up with $102,853 surplus with our budget for the year. Considering all the expenses we had for the general fund, we ended up a little bit better. So, considering everything that has gone on the last few months, I don't think we can anticipate that for this year, but hopefully, we can move towards that direction as well for this year. But I'm requesting that this resolution be approved to close out the 18 years.
Just for the record, will you restate that number we entered on? It was one.
Right. It was $1,196,000, and the actual expenditures was $1,124,735. So that left us the surplus of the 102,853, above the normal budget amounts.
I make a motion that we accept the budget amendment as presented.
I second it.
Moved and second. Any question? If not, ask for a vote. All in
We have
favor?
questions from the
We have
audience.
questions.
Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
My name's Ed Morley. I had a couple of questions about the differences, if Ella could maybe
Sure.
explain to us. The general administration was up, what, about $30,000?
Yes, sir.
And the special activities was about half what we normally spend.
Right.
If you could give us.
Yes, sir, I can give you.
And the state grants was, we were down about 50% on that.
Right, state grants, the actual, the administration was up due to the severance package that we had to pay out last year. That was substantial. The recreation part of it, it was down because we did not spend as much money on Fall Fest that had previously been spent. And what was the other one that you asked about?
The grants, state grants.
The state grants, yes, there were not as many state grants available this last year as we normally had available, so our revenues were projected a little higher than we actually received, so that's why.
I believe when they budgeted for that amount of state grants, they were hoping that we would get our local qualified government status back sooner than we did. We did.
And that was what I was questioning, because I knew that y'all were planning on getting that.
Right, so that affected our grant getting. Okay.
Any further? Have a vote for the adoption of the 2018 budget? Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Now, we'll go back to the old business, the bear ordinance. We have Brian Watts here who answers a lot of questions. We made, went over this at the workshop, and we have some more questions I know from some of the people in Sky Valley. And where's Ryan? Could you come down here, please? Don't hide from him.
Make a motion to get it on the floor. Make a motion that we accept the wildlife access ordinance
adoption of the bear ordinance. All in favor?
That's in the discussion first.
Have discussion, we'll have discussion. So, does anyone in the crowd here have, in the council, have a, something they would like to discuss on the bear ordinance?
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to substitute some language for section 6. Section 6 is entitled additional provisions to minimize bear-human conflicts. I think we've heard some discussion to the effect that completely banning bird feeders would be a non-starter for a lot of folks. And accordingly, this motion permits feeders, however, it makes them subject to regulation during the bear season, April 15th to November 15th. It encourages owners to manage their feeders responsibly in terms of surveilling the feeders, taking them in when they're not attended, limiting the amount of feed that's set out at one time, taking in the feeders after dark. The provision also provides that feeders shall be removed when there is bear activity reported in the area or bears are seen or there is a bear incident. Sections C and D remain the same, namely, if the wildlife enforcement officer or any law enforcement officer warns people to take remedial action, they need to do so or be in violation of the ordinance. People need to store any attractants securely. Furthermore, after an initial contact or conflict with bear, no person shall continue or otherwise fail to secure or remove any likely food sources. In other words, rather than banning the feeders outright, we would just be very careful in how we employ them. The basis of the problem is that what any one individual does may have the effect of impacting on the rest of us in terms of our ability to enjoy Sky Valley without adverse interactions with the bears. And you know, this isn't an all-time thing. It's the bears are always here. Most of the time they're out in the woods. Plenty of food out in the woods. But if one person is feeding bears, then we all get impacted. Bears break in, bears find the bird seed inside your garage, inside the house. So at times like that, that's when we need to pull together. We need to pull together, limit the bears' access to this sort of food, garbage, and whatever, and have the bears go back into the woods where they belong.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else? Stan, please.
Ed Morley again.
No, he was ahead of you. Richard was out.
I'm sorry.
Good morning. My name is Richard Boyle, and I'm a longtime resident of beautiful Sky Valley, and I agree with what Miss Kathy said in our prayer. We're blessed to live in such a beautiful, beautiful place. And I wish this ordinance wasn't needed. And I had a conversation with Mr. Wunsch, who I want to commend, the DNR person, because he returned my phone call, and that was very nice of him to do it. But if I could paraphrase what he said to me, and let him speak for himself, of course, but he said, the reason we need this ordinance is because we have a few selfish idiots that live here. That's paraphrased, that's not him. And I agree. The ordinance has a lot of thought into it, a lot of care, and it's Unfortunately, it's a very good ordinance except for Part 6, Paragraph A. I think you could remove that, which is the bird feeding part of it. And I guess I should have said I'm a bird feeder. We love feeding the birds. But anyway, removing that part will do nothing to the enforcement of that whole ordinance. And if for some reason you can't remove that paragraph, then just change the word prohibited to recommended. Just 2 words. And I think everything else is carried out by that. You called it, perhaps rightfully so, the bear ordinance. But you know, with the press here, it's going to be called the ABF, Anti-Bird Feeding Ordinance. So my suggestion is please consider either of those 2 changes to it. And as I say, we've had bears on our property. We've bought high-dollar, supposedly bear-preventable feeders. Unfortunately, the bears always got them. But what we did each time, I've lived here over 25 years, been coming here for over 30 years, you just stop feeding them when they are present. And it doesn't take much common sense to do that. So don't prevent all of us from feeding the birds. I know they don't need the food, but look at me, I don't need it. So please consider doing that. Thank you very much. You're all awesome. Our enforcement, awesome.
If you would just hold up for just a second, please. I'm going to recommend that we not take, if it's all right with the mayor, we not take questions from the audience just yet, and that we start with Brian Watts. He was here last fall and spoke to everybody relative to not a perceived bear problem, but I believe the word he used was we have humanized bears. And he transmitted information from his superiors relative to this problem that we had and what they would or would not do if Sky Valley didn't enact an ordinance. So Paul Wheeler sent Ryan the proposed ordinance. He's had a chance to read it and discuss it. So I would like him to update us as far as right now compared to what he was saying before, and what information that Paul Wheeler has shared with him relative to the general tone as far as bird feeders. Would that be okay?
No.
Suggestion?
No.
Okay.
The reasoning for allowing the people to speak first was to add, for him to hear their questions, whereby he could go from our agenda and answer all their questions as he speaks. So,
Okay.
that was the reason. You have one question? Yes, sir.
I'll be quick. Jim's suggestions, I think, also kind of support what you're suggesting as well, lightening it up a little bit so it's not prohibited. Rely on our people in the valley to just use common sense and follow some direction. The other thing about the ordinance that I would recommend is the easiest thing for us to enforce and do something about is the way we handle garbage at the street side. And I think the ordinance is too liberal in that. I think that our renters and our homeowners need to know that there is no exceptions to that law, and that if they violate it, there should be a fine or a penalty or something. We'll give a warning up front by way of communicating that law. That's something to me that would be a lot easier to enforce and would help go a long ways toward helping to prevent the bears getting into our human food.
Hi, I'm Barbara Kobacker, and I live in Sky Valley. I would like to know the change between bears 5 years ago, what it was last year, how much they had to spend money-wise to take care of our bears, and what kind of a problem are we looking? What is the expansion of bear problems up here from 2 years ago, 3 years ago? And I live on a street where we knowingly had people feeding bears. And it's very tough to go to your neighbor and say, don't do that, because the neighbor will tell you, but the bears and I have this understanding and believe all this stuff. And I would really like some financial oomph in this for people who really knowingly feed bears. And these are not people that just accidentally feed them. They're feeding them on a regular schedule. The bears come just like deers to a salt lick. And I think that type of thing has to really be responded to instead of looking the other way, which is what I did for the last 2 years.
Thank you. One more.
Hi, my name's Rick Macy. I think that we need to police each other. If we go, as Jim said, and you see a neighbor like that, then we need to call the police. And they need to be reported, okay? I mean, like you said, because of 3 or 4 dummies out here that are doing this, the whole valley's gonna get penalized. So if I see somebody, I'm gonna report them. And I think that we all should do that.
Unless you've got an ordinance. It's on
Right,
police
right.
ordinance.
Now,
May I,
Ryan,
may I speak?
yes, okay,
Hi.
last one.
I'm Maureen Platt. I would like the consideration, I have been in my house full-time for 30 years. I have absolutely never had a bear come after my garbage. The way I do it is I don't have a locked garbage can. 30 seconds after a bear gets into my garbage, I'll be at Reeves to buy my locked garbage can. I will comply. But right now, I put my garbage, I have a very large garbage can with a heavy lid, but it does not latch. Until I have an issue, and I have it for 30 years, I really don't want to go out and buy another garbage can. But I will if that's the law. But I'd like the consideration that if I don't have the bears, I put my garbage out at 8 o'clock, and the folks come probably 8:30 to pick up my garbage. And I haven't really ever had a bear get into my garbage. And I really would ask for that consideration, because I simply don't have a problem. I have a garage, so the garbage can is kept in the garage until I have to put it out to be picked up. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ryan, now you've heard it. Oh.
So, anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Ryan Watts. I'm a wildlife technician too with the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, Wildlife Resources Division.
You need to speak up just a little bit.
Yes.
I am more or less the area manager of Raven County, Morrow and WMA. So the past 2 years, I've handled all the bear problems up here in Sky Valley. And we neither support nor deny, oppose the bear ordinance. You know, we would love to see it, and that's simply because I'm in the business of protecting wildlife, and I believe this ordinance protects wildlife in a way that we can't do on a statewide level. So, of course, me and the people I work with are for it. For the most part, but we're not going to say we support it or oppose it, but we think it'd be a good thing. And it would help us out, and I think it'd be a good thing for the bears too, and that's why we support it. Last year, I came to 3 city council meetings, went to almost every home in Sky Valley, put out door hangers, gave Debbie Dollhouse door hangers. I think everybody here probably had a bear information sheet put on their door. And the reason that I believe this ordinance would be necessary is because we put out those door hangers, and I came to city council meetings and spoke, and told Sky Valley what they were doing wrong and why their bears acted the way they did and why there's such a problem. And I had 0 improvement in the bear population, absolutely 0. After all that stuff, I still had trap bears up here. And that's why I suggested the ordinance, and I think it'd be a good thing. And like I said, it would help the bears out. So the way that I think and the way that other people in our agency think is biologically. We don't think we're starting to, trying to manage people and bears at the same time. But biologically, my mind runs off of data. And the data that I have says that this ordinance would be a good thing, and I think it'd be a necessary thing for up here based on the problems that I've seen in the past. And the reason I say that is because last year, you know, went up here and did so much work trying to educate people, and I saw 0 compliance, essentially. That's what happened. And it wasn't just people feeding them purposely. That is against state law. You know, our agency can enforce the state law of purposely feeding bears. But, you know, that they quit doing it pretty quick. So there's no way really to enforce that. I mean, if you put a bird feeder out and you know a bear gets it and you put it right back out, technically you're in violation of state law because you're knowingly feeding a bear because you know it's going to come back. But you can't go around, our people in our agency can't go around and write 300 people a ticket. So it's just not, it doesn't make any sense. So what I want to try to get y'all to understand, like I said, my mind runs off of data. And there is absolutely no published research anywhere at all. I've looked for it, I can't find it, that says that feeding birds is beneficial to songbird populations, health, anything. I can't find any published research. You might find a website with it. That's not published research. So essentially what it comes down to is bird feeders don't help the birds. I mean, they have plenty of natural food out there. They've been here before, I mean, City of Sky Valley, how old is it?
40 years.
40 years old, something like that. It's 40 years old. For songbirds here long before anybody lived up here 40 years ago. There's just as many, just as plentiful, and no health problems. I mean, they don't need to feed, that's the thing. The feeding of the birds is I know everybody likes to do it, and I completely understand it, trust me. My wife likes to do it, I know tons of people who do, and I get it. But that is, to me, it's kind of a selfish thing. It's for your own pleasure, and I understand it, but you're feeding the birds, you're not helping the birds. Feeding the birds is hurting the bears, however, because it does. So think of bird feeders. I've responded to lots and lots of bear calls. I'm young, I haven't worked for the state, but for 3 years now, 3.5 years, but I have handled more bear calls than y'all could probably ever imagine. In the summertime, I work daylight to dark just about every day handling bear complaints. And everybody that I work with that handles bear complaints as well, we call it the gateway drug to bear problems or bird feeders. Every stinking time. It doesn't matter if it's from Sky Valley or Helen, Georgia, or Lake Burton, Lake Raven, all the way to Big Canoe, Cohutta, all the way as far west as the bird population goes in the state. Common thread is bird feeders, and that is a lot, every single time.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between the hummingbird feeder with the liquid in the bird seed put out? Does it make any difference?
Yeah, and the reason y'all haven't seen hummingbird feeders hit as hard up here, because everybody has bird feeders out.
Okay, so my question is, moving to the next section, if you put out the liquid for the hummingbird and didn't put out the bird seed, would that help?
No, it won't help. They're still gonna, I mean, that's sugar water. So they like the bird seed because it's more accessible. They can just reach up there and grab it and eat it, or it's on the ground after you put your bird feeder up at night. Those birds waste so much seed, it all falls on the ground. And unless you're willing to go out there and scrape it up every single night, and guess what, you're not gonna get 100% of it.
All right, so if you put out the liquid hummingbird feeder, you took that in at night, would that alleviate the problem?
No.
Because that's not spilling seed into the ground below.
It's not, but I'll tell you why. Surprisingly, a lot of people didn't know it, but I spent lots and lots of time up here last summer and in winter, kind of under the radar. And I did follow bears around up here and watch their activities, watch what they did, where they went. And they went from house to house in daylight hours. So it does not matter if you have it out in the daylight or not. I saw just more bear activity up here during daylight hours than I did at night. So it doesn't matter at night. I mean, I think 2 bears that I trapped up here were caught in daylight hours. So, and I mean, I responded to several calls up here. One of them, it was 12 o'clock in the afternoon in July, and there's a bear walking around McClure Circle up there. And I followed it around for like 3 miles, and it got to dark, and the bear went up in the woods and laid down and went to sleep. And he moved from 12 o'clock in the middle of the day to 8 o'clock that night, and that's daylight movement. So anything you do during daylight, if you take your bird pictures in at night, it doesn't matter. They're still gonna hit it. So.
Brian,
Yes.
I was doing some research and I got onto a Colorado Parks and Wildlife Attracting Birds, Not Bears website. And it's also subtitled Help Keep Bears Wild. There's 6 points, bullet points for bear-safe bird feeding. One of those bullet points was keeping the area underneath feeders clear of hulls and debris. And it said, or switching to shelled or pre-hulled birdseed, often sold as porch and patio mix. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Do you know if that's a better way to do? Well, I'm trying to find out what can we do that will help the people who want bird feeders and yet not alienate DNR as far as what. And the other thing I needed to know, you said that last year that if we, Sky Valley, wasn't doing something to help solve our problem, that you were not going to be allowed to spend as much time up here as you had in the past identifying the problem and dealing with it. And is that still true?
So, how we got to the point where we're at right now. I came up last year, got a few calls early last year, I guess it was May, about bears, and I responded up here to them. And, you know, it started, the guy said, oh, they got into my house, and I'm thinking, yeah, right, okay. You wouldn't believe, now, Sky Valley, I think there were, what was it, Vaughn, 7 break-ins last year by bears? And I've said it in another council meeting last year, we don't deal with that many break-ins in our region like every 2 or 3 years. I mean, 7, it's pretty dangerous. I mean, that's very dangerous, and that's why I came up here. And by our policy, and the way I understood it, some people have called the head of DNR, which I don't even know who that is, to be honest with you. We don't have a head of DNR. Some people have said that they called them and they said, oh, we wouldn't do this, we don't support that, whatever. The head of DNR, we have a commissioner and a director, and both of them write our policies. So our policy states that if there are any attractants at all at a home or within the vicinity of a home, and all the homes in Sky Valley are within the vicinity of another home. So if you call about a bear and I come and your neighbor has a bird feeder out, there's nothing I can do. That's our policy. The reason I trapped so many bears last year was because I believe there was a pretty significant public safety concern. I was worried about people getting hurt, and when it gets to that, it's bad. It's a bad deal. And you know, I trapped quite a few bears and got rid of them, and it was a bad situation. They left Sky Valley, and they were taken a long ways away, and they were released, and they were so full food condition and human condition, that within a matter of days, they were doing the exact same thing in another part of the state. And then guess what all those people thought about Sky Valley? They're pretty upset. Because one lady got her house broken into, and the bear, I mean, this is just a few days after I turned it out, the bear broke into her house, and I went and got the bear and pulled his ear tags and looked back in my records, and it was a bear caught in Sky Valley just a few days before that. And she was very upset, very, very upset, because, at me mainly because I brought the bear over there to her. And I tried to explain to her I didn't do it to the bear, it's not my fault, I was just trying to help it. So, that's why we're to this point. And
Are you saying that Sky Valley is training bears to be hoodlums, and so when you put them away, they're hoodlums
that is,
where they are?
yes.
That makes sense. If that's what we're doing, we need to hear that.
Do you have any data to support what Mr. Macy said? Do bird feeders attract bears and then they go for garbage, or does garbage attract bears and then they go for bird feeders?
Based on my data that I see every day, and based on data published by other state and wildlife agencies, bird feeders are essentially, every time, like I said, the gateway drug to other bad habits, home invasions, garbage, because it's so easily accessible. It is a high energy food, high calories. It's always the first one that they get to, because it's just sitting out there in the yard. They can go out there and just take a bite, and they get used to being around houses. It's always the first part of the problem. Always number one.
How long do you have to keep the bird feeders away before they
Go away.
go away?
Well, see, the problem is that I saw up here last year. So, like I said, I spent more time up here than I think people realized. Someone who had a bear problem would put the bird feeder up. Well, guess where that bear went? He went 100 yards down to another road to another house that's never had a bear problem, and hit bird feeders down there. I mean, there was no way to get away from it up here. No way. And I followed those birds around quite a bit. And they would go from one house with a bird feeder, and then a person over here who for 2 months in the summer had no problem, next thing you know, their house gets hit. And it's because you took the food away from there. That bear is food conditioned to bird feeders. He knows that he's gonna find food at houses, at these little old posts that stick up about this far. He knows. I mean, they're not dumb, they're very smart. So that's why we kind of feel that this is necessary. How many incidents this year have you had?
I've had 0 this year. I've had a call. And
Okay.
guess what I told the person? Sorry,
Yeah.
I can't do nothing for you.
So statistically, there's been none this year. How about removing paragraph A of this ordinance? DNR will still keep its same stance where you neither approve or oppose that ordinance, but removing part A, do you think it damages the overall ordinance at all? And I should have started off by saying, I love the bears too.
You're saying part A is in the bird feeder part?
Just read part A. In fact, it might read it out loud. It really just says, hey, you are prohibited from feeding the bears between, I think it says birds, not the bears, yes, sorry, from April 15th to maybe 15th of October, November, whatever it is anyway, about 6 months. But I love feeding the bears, or the birds, sorry. I don't feed the bears. But I love feeding the birds. My cats are indoor cats, and they love watching the birds also. And I think this overly penalizes the vast majority of residents anywhere that are law-abiding, want to keep the wildlife beautiful, and have lived here for many, many, many years.
So, yeah, I think if you remove any language from the bird feeder section, and I think if you amend it in any way, you are spinning your wheels, really and truly. I mean, if they can access a bird feeder, so the way it's written, the way I understood it was, so you can have bird feeders, but if a bear hits it, then you have to put it up. Is that correct? Would that be accurate?
That's the way the amendment.
So the problem with that is, that happened last year.
I mean, somebody would get a bird feeder hit, and they would call us, or they call the police department, and they'd call me, and I'd go up there, and I'd say, you need to take the bird feeders up. Well, guess what happened? They went right down the road, just like I said a minute ago, 100 yards, went right to another bird feeder.
It's all what happens.
So if it's not citywide, then it doesn't work. That's just the science behind it. And my data that I have, it just doesn't work. It won't work.
So how long would this take?
Yeah, how long?
How long would this
If you have
condition the
some-
bears not to come to the houses, in your opinion?
Oh, if you enact it right now, I mean, it's gonna work this summer.
Oh, no, okay, so my point is, then how long would it be till we could put bird feeders out again?
Oh, never.
Ever?
You live in Bear, the bears were here before you lived here.
Okay, but my point is, I've been up here since 1981, didn't have the problem until recent.
Right.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, all these years prior to this, there was not an issue. Now all of a sudden it's an issue, and we know why it's an issue, because people were feeding the bears. So can we recondition them back to ever? So you're saying forever, this ordinance would be forever?
Oh, I don't know, that's not a.
Well, that's what I'm saying, your opinion. Do you think it would have to last
Yeah,
forever?
because if you ever, if you ever take it away, then you're right back to square one.
It's just for 6 months. It's just for 6 months.
Right, yeah.
Right, well, it's just public.
It's 6
That's
months.
what we're outside.
Well, I'm saying, so forever and ever and ever and ever,
Just
for
for
this
6
6 months, you can't feed.
Yeah, that's 6 months.
6 months each year.
I don't like that.
6 months forever. The thing about that, the bird population, I don't know if y'all know the biology of the bird populations in the North Georgia mountains, Raven County specifically, but in the last 5 to 10 years, it has grown exponentially. Which is a healthy, thriving bird population, which most people think that's great. It also comes with needing to adapt, the people needing to adapt, because there's more bears in the woods. When I was growing up, I grew up in Raven County. I saw like 2 bears ever, until I was like 15 years old. And then now, working in the job I work, I see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds every year. And the population has expanded, if we are to be good stewards of wildlife in general, which includes bears, you need to adapt to that expanding population.
Right, one point to Ed's point, we had wild hogs come in, Ryan got calls on that, and they started showing up here. Had never had a hog problem before. I got a call from the club, a member of the board of the club, very concerned about those hogs getting on the golf course, cause extensive damage. And so in December of last year, the council approved the purchase of a hog trap that David Edwards has been operating under supervision of Vaughn, and it's been very effective thus far. And that's something that Ryan was doing, and by watching him, we learned how to do it. But that's an example of us having to adapt to that wild feral hog population that it is out of control. So the bear population is expanding as well. Not quite as quick as the hogs.
Can you use Sky Valley as a project? Can you use us for research? For instance, if Sky Valley said, from this date on, no one is going to put out a bird feeder, can you track to see if that really is working or not working? Can you use us as a research instead of just a problem child?
Yes, there are plans. I do have plans myself and the Adam Hammond, who was a state bear biologist, who I communicate with all the time. We do have plans to collar bears, and me and him had a conversation not too long ago, and I told him that Sky Valley would be the best place in the world for it, to monitor. There's one female up here particularly that I would like to catch, and just, catch her in a trap, put a collar on her, GPS and radio telemetry collar, and turn her back out right here in Sky Valley. I'll take her anyway, turn her back out, and see what her behaviors, how she adapts to a change. So, there are plans to do some research, and you saying that too, there are no cities, communities really in the state, Georgia, that have ever enacted a
bear ordinance, bear policy, anything of that nature that helps protect the bears. And I'm saying protect the bears because that's exactly what it does. There's no bones about it, it does. We've had problems, another technician that I work with, they have significant problems in the city of Helen every year, just like Sky Valley, not as bad, but they do have problems. And we were talking the other day, and he said, man, I hope that passes, because then it really puts pressure on Helen to help protect their bears. So if you want to be a kind of a groundbreaking community in the eyes of state agencies and in the protection of wildlife, you know, City of Highlands, they can say whatever they want to say about being bear safe or whatever. I've been up there, and they're not. I mean, I hate to tell them that, but I had a request from a city employee up there to bring a bear trap last year, and they asked for my help, and I work in a different state. So it's much worse up there than you think. And it's kind of groundbreaking. I mean, right here in the Southern Appalachians, the bear population has really exploded, and there's nobody really doing anything. It's just more and more traps being set, more and more bears being killed. That's what we've seen. And
To Ryan's point with the City of Highlands, they did take a lot of actions to put out suggestions to the residents and all. And spoke with the mayor last Wednesday, and they are looking at finally putting the ordinance in place because they've come to the point and got educated enough to realize that's what it's going to take, and they're trying to get representatives from the clubs there to not put an ordinance in there, but become what they call a bear-wise community. And they've got a lot of problems with the commercial districts down there, so they're addressing that. But at the same time, they're addressing bird feed as it's one of the biggest attractants. The head of wildlife biology with the North Carolina Wildlife Commission, he was at that meeting, and he says the same thing Ryan does about the bird feed being such a high caloric, high energy source of food right there, that they'll walk past all the natural food in a bumper crop year to go right to the bird feeder.
Ryan, is this addressing, from your perspective, and what we're looking at with this proposed ordinance, is this addressing a potential public safety issue?
I absolutely believe that, yes. And I will say too that I felt like last year I had done everything I could do to protect the citizens of Sky Valley from, problems with wildlife. I won't say a bear attack because that scares everybody. But problems with bears and other wildlife, I felt like I had exhausted every effort that I could go through. And I felt like this was the only way that the public safety of the citizens of Sky Valley would ever be met, honestly. I couldn't do anything more. There's nothing more I could do.
I have a question to the police chief. I believe, Chief, that you made mention of a response to a bear call at a residence where you had to initiate some action to drive a bear off with rubber bullets.
We've done that a few times.
Okay. And if I remember it correctly, didn't work.
All of our countermeasures, we wore out before we ever reached out to Ryan. When I first got here, you pull up, you hit your strobe lights, hit your air horn, then scurry off. That quit working. They start challenging us more. Bear spray, 35-foot pepper spray in the face, worked for a little while. Then they started challenging you and just sneezing it off and getting more aggressive. Rubber buckshot through this 12-gauge shotgun worked for a little bit. Then it got to where they would just kind of turn around and square off on you, and they're sizing you up at that point, thinking, okay, can he do? What is he going to do to me again? Can I get to him before he does? You could see the process was getting more and more dangerous. That's when we reached out to Ryan, because we knew at that point there was nothing else we could do outside of killing an animal, and that is absolutely the last thing you ever want to do, especially when we're in their woods. So that's when we reached out to Ryan. But we tried all those countermeasures, and systematically they failed. And that's when we reached out to Ryan. It's his area, he's the expert, and he took over at that point.
Thank you.
But he said no city in Georgia, is that correct? Did I hear you correctly? Has a bear ordinance, is that
No
correct?
city.
Let's not be first.
Why not? Why not? Why not?
Why not? Because
I truly believe though, if the city passed this ordinance, and the reason I'm up here presenting my data, which I feel like supports the passing of the ordinance, because it protects wildlife, and that's what I'm all about. I feel like it would set a standard for other cities who are going through the same thing, maybe not quite as bad. And there's lots of people in the North Georgia mountains who love their bears, and I believe you get lots and lots of good press from it. The Bear Wise community, something like this, they could really only dream about this, because the Bear Wise organization as a whole, they really just can't stand bird feeders, because it's the gateway drug, like I've said, to other habits that end up causing a loss of bears. That's what happens.
Would it be fair to say that we've had bird feeders for 30 years up here?
more.
I just use the 30. And now we've had a bear problem in the last year and a half, or last year really.
It's been longer than that.
Well, I'm not sure. I think, I would say a year and a half, but let's say 2 years. You know, there's something that changed behavior other than bird feeders.
I think that is more attributable to the expansion of the bird population than other behaviors, because, yeah, there were people that purposely fed bears in Sky Valley, but, I mean, in all the other communities I go into, there's people that don't feed them on purpose, and they just have bird feeders out, and it's the same situation. It's not on the scale that it is here.
The bear population didn't change in the last year and a half either, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
It did.
Come on. Yes, sure. Chief,
and he's got pretty good numbers on how many bears. There's that one female that had all these cubs, and that's what drove your population up here. I mean, y'all had just a couple females that's having 3 or 4 cubs a year, and then all of a sudden your population triples, quadruples, and that's what causes the explosion.
Sounds like we need birth control.
Sir, is there adequate food sources, in your opinion, to support the bear population that we have up here?
There is, yeah, and that's the reason the bear population has expanded, is because there's good food. They wouldn't have expanded if they didn't have a food source.
What kind of food?
Acorns, berries, nuts, I mean, about any kind. The only thing about that kind of food is they have to work for it. They have to climb up in a tree and get acorns. They have to do all this. Whereas at a bird feeder, they have to tear it down, and they sit on their butt, and they wreck it all to them, and they eat it. And then they move along to the next one, sit on their butt, eat it. They don't have to work for it. That's why it is preferred over natural foods.
It sounds like, to me, that this is a problem that we are sort of a focus or a target on, but it's a problem that's going to continue to grow in Appalachia.
That's true.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, why don't you set up a committee of bird lovers and bird feeder lovers and people who would like to see us become a model city with no bird feeders, guard the wildlife. Why don't you set up a committee for people to hash this out? And if we're just kicking the can down the road, you know, this summer the bird feeders up, the bears come. You know, my neighbor had the bear in the house with the birthday cake. And I'm telling you, it was a cute story. But it wasn't cute when they came from the top level down to the kitchen, and there was a mother and 2 cubs in their kitchen. And they fortunately went out the door instead of attacking them. They had a dog in that house. It could have been a bloodbath. And what I'm thinking is, why not get a committee, and you're either going to be proactive or you're going to be stay the same. What is that, Richard?
Well, let me answer your question.
Can you
Just a minute, please. Well, personally, I think as your mayor, that this ordinance is a necessity to Sky Valley. It's a very small one. It's stuff that can be added, and it can delete. But the main issue is right now is to have this gentleman come here to help us. Because yes, we do have an increase in bear. When you can see from one year to the next, you used to see the mother bear with one cub. And all of a sudden you're seeing the mother bear with 2 cubs. And last year you're seeing the mother bear with 3 cubs. So it's increasing. And yes, we have bird feeders out. We don't at our house. And I have the question asked me, why? Can't we just put them out and no one would notice? No. But we are not going to have bird feeders. We can have a committee like you asked for, but we're going to have this ordinance, and we're going to have this ordinance passed today. We can have all the committees you want, and if you come up with some good ideas, we can have it added to this ordinance, or we can have something deleted. But first off, we got to have this passed, and all the questions of why, and I feed all the birds and stuff. Yes, but you're talking just a period of 6 months without feed. The feed you want is in the wintertime, when there's no feed for the birds. That's when they come around. I bet you don't get half the birds or a quarter of the birds during the summertime that you do in the middle of the winter. So this is you can plant flowers that birds like, flowers that hummingbirds like. My wife has started picking up flowers for the hummingbirds because we love the hummingbirds. And we always had feeders out, but we do not now. So I'm just saying that this gentleman has expressed his research. We're just talking from our hearts because of the bird feeders and everything. I'm saying that Sky Valley Council should pass this resolution as it stands right now. And then we can work on any additions or anything there. And as the mayor, I appoint you to form a committee to talk about the bird feeders and so forth.
There's another issue that hasn't, or at least I don't recall hearing it today, that hasn't been addressed relative to the police chief assigning his 2 new officers to go around and inspect houses for bird feeders. Police Chief Estes, would you comment on that probable cause issue relative to bird feeders and bears and your officers going around to people's homes?
It was kind of crazy. I kind of quit listening there for a second. No, I mean, you want me to assign officers to walk yard patrol on bird feeding? No, I don't feel like getting sued anytime soon.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
All right? And there's also talk about people being responsible. Well, people who are feeding the bears, actively feeding the bears, aren't responsible. People, if there's a speed limit of 25 miles an hour down Sky Valley Way, and somebody's doing 35, they're not responsible. They have the option to not pay attention to the ordinance or to the laws, and they have the option to pay attention. The police chief and his officers do not have the right to go into your home or into your backyard to check to see if you have bird feeders. So if you want to violate an ordinance if it gets passed, you have that option. However, if a problem occurs and you call the police department and they come in, then they can do something because there's an ordinance in place. And I think that's what's not being talked about, as opposed to the undercurrent about, well, the police chief is going to go out and start looking at your house. They can't do that. There's a thing called probable cause. Probable cause would be if somebody comes to my house for a particular reason and sees
The bears.
next door having a bird feeder or a bear in that yard, then he can address that. So there's another whole issue that's going on here that comes into play. The options are you can follow an ordinance or you can disregard it. We already know that not everybody in Sky Valley is responsible. It's just a fact of life. When you get a number of people together, not everybody thinks the same way. Not everybody agrees with what laws are in place. So we're trying to do something here, or we're proposing anyway. Have something in place. And then let's work with it, you know. I spent hours Saturday trying to find out how we could have bird feeders. I don't have a bird feeder, but if you like a bird feeder, then let's see if we can do that if it doesn't impact you in a negative way. So I think it's a question of whether anybody likes it or not. He's the expert in this particular matter, and that department is the expert, the DNR, and that we aren't experts. We may have our likes and dislikes, but he's the expert. His supervisors determine the policy, and that I think that we should be looking to pay attention to what the expert says. Kind of like if you get cancer and you go to a doctor and say, I don't really have cancer. I'm not going to pay attention to the doctor. It's just a start. It's not something that's going to be Ryan's going to come in, or Spencer's going to come in at night with his flashlight and start looking around to see if we've got violations. It's just a start on something.
Ryan, last summer we had 2 mother bears, each with 3 cubs. How many of the incidents that were reported had to do with those 8 bears? And how many had to do with some other random bear?
Essentially all of them. And what happened is, with those problem bears, they were trapped and they were taken away and handled with, appropriately. Essentially all of them were. And what concerned me the most, though, is I got rid of those bears and there was about a 3 or 4 week very quiet period. And I thought, well, take care of the problem. Had a house get somewhat broken into, a door torn off, and the bear was coming into the house when the homeowner came around. Set a trap there, caught the bear. That bear, I have no idea where it came from. But I do know that it had come and hit bird feeder after bird feeder after bird feeder in a couple day period before it entered that home. So that's what concerned me the most. And that's when I really saw the writing on the wall, as in, it don't matter how many bears you take out of here, there's going to be another one come in every single time. And just, I know people get upset about it, and people are upset about it, but there's so many more alternatives to bird feeders, it's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's bird baths, bird houses, you can put perches literally right outside your window that fits a bird's feet. They don't like to perch on a limb this big around because they can't wrap their feet around it. All you gotta do is put a little limb right outside your windshield and they'll sit there. And you can watch them. Man, there's so many other ways besides feeding them that you can see the birds. I would much rather, if I fed the birds at my house, I don't, but if I did, I would much rather have a bluebird box on a tree right outside my window and watch mating pair of bluebirds, raise a bunch of young, watch them grow up. Because guess what, those are kind of like your birds at that point. I mean, you watch them grow up from little tiny eggs, and their mom and daddy's never even seen them, and you see a little head pop out. So, to me, that's more valuable than seeing a bunch of random birds in a feeder. I mean, doing things that actually improve the health of the bird populations is more valuable to me, as in nesting habitat, watering habitat, planting native flowers and plants that benefit birds. That's more valuable to me than just going out. I mean, that stuff's expensive too, I don't know how y'all afford it, to be honest with you. But it's expensive, but it doesn't help them. And, you know, this ordinance does not cut out feeding of them in the wintertime. The only data that you can find that supports feeding birds is it might, and that's might, as in it doesn't, it's not been scientifically proven to help them, but it might help them in the wintertime. That's it. You can feed birds all you want in the wintertime.
Rand, let me just interject one thing, and that is, I think sometimes we mischaracterize the bird feeding. It's not to feed the birds, it's not to help the birds, it's to entertain us.
Correct.
And in fact, we've got an elderly population in Sky Valley. Last year, my mother celebrated her 100th anniversary. She's on a walker. She can't do the trails anymore. She was a skier when she was young. But she can come up to Sky Valley and she can watch the bird feeders. And it is constant activity. And mostly we're feeding the same birds that are here all winter. They don't need the food in the summer, but it's just one more nice thing that people can do. And it seems to me that we ought to be able to craft a bear ordinance that, like, you know, you say you're data driven. Well, I feel like I'm data driven too. And my experience has been that most feeders in most years aren't targets of bears. In the years where there's lots of bears, then yeah, your chances are a lot better. But I bet there's folks in this room that have had feeders last summer that did not have a bear attack there. And I think it's possible to put the full force of law of an ordinance behind the requirement to take down the feeder if there's bear activity and get just about the same results as you could. You know, obviously not as good, but, you know, it seems to me to be a reasonable compromise to make. And I would be...
I think you've gone your 3 minutes.
Well, I'm not limited to 3 minutes, but I'll stop.
Thank you. Brian, thank you very much for coming here.
We have one more question.
I have a question for Ryan Andrew Hill, Five Lakes Circle. The city has taken some measures as far as the garbage problem, but what I wanted to know was what was your assessment of the waste removal and garbage that whole time you were here? How often did you see the bears near or in the dumpsters? And what kind of shape were they in? And private garbage cans? Because that's part of this ordinance, and I haven't heard that really addressed.
Yeah. Honestly, I saw it's much better than what I normally see in communities. Normally, about 80% of people who call about bears, nuisance bears, say they got my garbage. And my response to them every time, and all our response is, don't put it out, take it away from them. If they can't get to it, they're not going to come. And then the other parts are bird feeders. I mean, we very rarely get any calls about bears have personalities, so everyone's different. Some of them are just crazy. And some of them you just have to trap. I mean, because their personality is they'd rather walk up an asphalt driveway and just look in windows than other ones. So there's always going to be problems with wildlife, not problems, but there's always going to be wildlife. And I'm not saying that I'll never be up here trapping another bear, because there's places that are spick and span, no bird feeders, no garbage, nothing, no food for the bears. We have to go set traps just because they're curious animals, and everyone's different. Some of them, you just have to trap them and teach them that people aren't good. I'm not saying I'll never trap a bear up here again. I'm just saying that right there will keep me from having to trap 6, 7, 8, 9 bears a year. So.
Thank you very much, Brian. I'd like to call for adoption of the bear ordinance. We'd like to have a vote on the bear ordinance.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to amend the bear ordinance with the section 6 that I have mentioned. And of course, I will need a second.
Well, I hadn't been inclined to second, but that was before I listened to Ryan. Sounds to me like there's no such thing as a good bird feeder or a good time to feed birds when the bears are active, so. I think people will continue to feed birds because you're not going to come up on their porch and tell them not to. I hate passing an ordinance that you know is going to be sort of ignored, but I don't, the ordinance that Jim has proposed, it sort of says, okay, go ahead and put the bird feeders out, is contrary to what Ryan is saying that we should do, so I'm really not inclined to endorse or second the amendment.
Well, Mike?
Due to the not second, then I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'd like to have a vote on the proposed adoption of the bear ordinance. As
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, may we discuss it, the bear ordinance as it
We've been
stands?
discussing the bear ordinance.
Well, I'd like to continue discussing it because I have.
Call the question.
I think it's a point of order, and I think that it belongs in some of the dead horse here, so let's get on with this. And as I've said before, you can always add to it, and you can always take away.
That is exactly
So
the
let's
point that I would like to discuss, Mr. Mayor. We shouldn't be
Call
passing
the
stuff
question.
that's gonna be needed.
No,
Need a lot.
no,
Yeah.
you're out of order. Now, I have a motion to have, all those in favor of adopting this motion?
Is this point of order
Aye.
to make the motion to call a question? Does the council not vote to do that?
I have a motion to adopt the bear ordinance. I'm calling for a vote on the present bear ordinance as written. I have a vote on it.
Aye.
Aye. And moved.
I am in,
Opposed? 3 to 1.
I'm gonna vote
Bear
no,
ordinance.
just as a matter of
I approve this
principle.
Ordinance approved. Now,
You did a good job, Mr. Mayor. I think you did a fair, very fair hearing, and I agree with you 100%.
we have
Hey, they did a good job.
the public forum and general comments of anything other than the present ordinance.
May I speak?
Excuse me, I have a letter to read from somebody in attendance that they sent to me to read.
Go ahead.
This is from Doug Parks. I hope you, and this was sent to me, and Doug asked me to forward it to the council and the city manager, and I have. I hope you all are doing well. I've talked with Paul Wheeler at length regarding my concerns regarding the condition of ditches and roadways in Sky Valley. I have for several years voiced my concerns about the city not removing leaves and debris from ditches and erosion issues it is causing. Lisa Mullins has always listened and been helpful in passing my request to the maintenance department. I have been informed several times in the past that the leaf machine was broken. Even if broken, we should have enough manpower to do the job. I hope the commission will work on a long-term plan to correct this problem and control erosion of ditches, driveways, and roadways. Another reason for action is to limit the liability of the city for damages caused by negligence in erosion and water runoff control. As a taxpayer, I appreciate you addressing this problem. Thank you very much, Doug Parks.
Jackie Bell.
Have you addressed the visitor center yet in this meeting?
No. Yes, not at this meeting, last meeting we
Well, excuse me,
discussed.
but is it a done thing?
We are moving the visitor center to the timeshare office. Are you aware of that?
I am, but I have a very, very bad idea about it. At Christmas, when I had to rent some timeshares, in order to get to that office down there, you gotta walk down about 25 steps. and then you gotta walk back up about 25 steps. There is no handicap parking, there is no way to get a handicapped person to the visitor center. So what do you plan to do about that? I mean, these people come in here to love us, and when they see those steps, they're gonna say, well, I'm sorry, we're just leaving, I'm sorry.
That's something I'll need to address with the timeshare office to see what alternate route we can
They
get
have
to the
done, I've already
office.
asked them more than once. And she told me at Christmas time, she said, we wish that we could get something off the street right down here that would come into the porch on this side. She said, but I don't think that's gonna happen. So I can't imagine that you would have a visitor center where people gotta walk down 25 steps and back up. They're not gonna do it.
Well, my one thing is, it's better to have something there than to have nothing at all at this point, because we need to have something, you know, for the visitor center, and the timeshare office has agreed to do this. They are open 7 days a week. I understand your accessibility issues, but at some point, you have to have something, you know, that's better than nothing.
I disagree 100%. Because really, I think it needs to be out, well, y'all don't care what I can't think, but it needs to be out on the highway so people will know to come into there, rather than driving down in there and hoping they're gonna find somebody that's gonna show them. But, okay, that's, all right, and I have one more thing, Mr. Mayor. Will we ever do anything about the waterways? That pond down there is, I get sick, I get nauseated when I see that dam. Is anything, I called the EPD and they said the city had to take care of that, or whoever owned the dam, and I know Mr. Merrill probably owns it.
It's Mr. Merrill's property and this.
But it's just awful, and the ditch, the last group of council persons cleaned it to a spot, and then from there to the little walkway is just grown up, and from the walkway to the dam is just a mess. It looks terrible.
We do have that slated on our list to clean that ditch area that you're talking about where it's overgrown. The Public Works Office will be getting to that as time allows. We have just been bombarded with everything else recently, but it is on the list to clean that up.
And my third thing is, when is the entrance gonna ever look like a beautiful place to drive in? It is
We're
so bad.
working on that as well. I have a gentleman that does landscaping that has been working with me. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks can get some annuals out to give it more color. We've already purchased pine straw to put the pine straw to replace the mulch that is currently out there. And I actually have a few ladies that have agreed to help me, you know, to get some things together. But I've already went and looked at plants. I'm looking at how many I need and different things, but we will hopefully in the next couple of weeks get that
Why can't we
spruce
just
back up.
hire like other resorts? Why can't we just hire a landscaping company? to
We
keep
need
us
money.
beautiful?
You want to pay for it? You want to do it? You want to
Well, we
donate?
pay a lot of taxes, so it looks like we could have some money.
Well, the problem, and it's not just a money issue at this point. Our personnel has been stretched, you know, to the max at this point. Y'all seem to think that we just can snap our fingers and jobs are done, and that's not the case. I mean, it takes a while to get things done, and I understand what you're saying about the entrance. It is, I have the guys doing what they can, when they can, but.
I'm talking about hiring somebody that's a professional, like Waterfall and Kingwood and Mama G's.
Can I make a suggestion? If y'all feel like that's something y'all want to do, could you, as a community, the POA, possibly have someone to come in and assist with this? Because my understanding is that years ago, the city did not maintain this entrance.
Garden Club did.
That has been my, I keep hearing the same thing, and everybody's like, the city needs to do it, the city needs to do it. Where our funds are limited, you know, our staff is limited, and I'm not just making excuses here. We are stretched to the max at this point. I mean, we are. The guys are doing everything they can. They're working overtime hours just to keep up with what we've got going on now.
Well, it sounds like to me you need more people. And that leads me to why I've been standing here for the last hour and a half listening to my bird feeders. But this is, Mayor, and I want to thank you for coming by my house, especially Paul Wheeler and you too.
Yes, sir.
But this is a serious issue. What just happened at my house is pretty severe. And if you'll look through the pictures I gave you, the ditches are not clean. And right in front of my house, the pipe is completely collapsed. Okay, so now you got the road that's got a crack in it. Now my house has got over $5,000 worth of damage to it because of the runoff of the water coming down the streets. I mean, foundation's cracked. I mean, this is real. You can ride by my house and take a look at it, 160. Take a look at what just happened. And it's just because of the ditches not being cleaned out. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, you got people working, but they're not doing their job.
I've got the same problem you have. Matter of fact, we had the rains on Friday and Saturday.
It's terrible.
The pipe underneath my driveway is clogged and just washed, and it's a mess.
It is a mess. Well, I've got proof, and thank you for sending the adjuster out. I do appreciate that. However, what really upset me is what you said earlier. You said, you know, if the insurance adjuster doesn't do anything, we can't do nothing for you. Well, that's wrong. It wasn't an accident. This is negligence. Okay? Not doing what you're supposed to do to keeping these pipes open and clean is negligence. Okay? It's not an accident. That accidentally didn't happen. It's because the pipes are clogged. It's the reason I got water coming into my home and ruined my hardscapes and landscapes. Took it completely out, and you saw it. I mean, everybody saw it. It was very shocking to me too. I mean, and I appreciate Paul coming by and helping out around the house because I was out of town when it happened. But this is important. I mean, this is a lot of people's houses that could be a big trouble, especially mine. And I just need a little help. That's all. Just clean it up. That's all I got to say.
160. Thank you very much for
What street?
interest.
160 Ridgepole, that's right here.
Ridgepole, okay.
Yes, please go by and take a look at it.
Beside the tree that's falling down.
Oh, that is, you're right, there's a big tree about to go too. But if you don't look at the pipe that's going under your road, the concrete is cracking. And I got a picture where we crawled up in the pipe and the pipe's collapsed.
I got the same issue.
So you're not getting, the culvert's not getting water, it's going out around it and down my driveway. So, I need some help. Thank you.
I'd like to adjourn this meeting and go to executive session. Have a motion to adjourn, go to executive session.
Let's go to the stairs.
Why not? It's a problem. Yeah, let's go and fix it. Barbara, thank you for that, and I'll get you, listen.
Now you can make the motion.
Well, I make a motion to go back to the regular session.
Motion second. How do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Adjourn.